So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 highest damage builds for PvP and PvE in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes and perks you want to have, then what gems and specific gear you want to use for each weight category so you could get 100% the best stats out of your build. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies to get to the highest damage and much more. So with all this said, if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then, moving over to the first build, which is the one and only Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet. And these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 150 or even 200. And then start building your constitution. And at the end game, always have this 3:1 ratio. So have intelligence 3 times more than constitution. And around level 60, you should have 300 intelligence and 100 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your gear, you want to go with light category. And the best setup is to use 1 medium chest piece and then the rest light armor. And this will put you at 12.7 kilograms, which is the closest possible weight just below the medium category. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Fire Staff. And these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then the first ability called the Fireball, and then get these 3 next perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Pillar of Fire and then the next perk to that as well. And now let's take a closer look at the other side and unlock all these 3 perks. Then lastly unlock the last third ability called the Burnout and then get these 2 perks. And now from this point you're for free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet. And these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock all these 3 perks and then the first ability called the Ice Storm and then get these 3 next perks. Then from here now let's move over to the other side and unlock this 1 perk. And then the second ability called the Ice Shower and then unlock the next perk to him as well. And lastly unlock the last third ability with the next perk. And now from this point you're full free to use your points in whatever order you like. Okay, so now we have come to the gameplay where I will show you the best way to play this build. So first of all we have the Fire Staff, and the Q ability aka the Burnout is a big dash spell, which you can use for mobility, or if you hit enemies while dashing they will take extra burn damage. Then the R ability is called the Pillar of Fire. I usually use it only on groups of mobs or players, but never in 1v1s. Because it will deal decent damage, but you have to stand still for a second while casting the spell. And by doing this, you become an easy target to hit, so basically only use the spell against multiple players. There is of course another way to cancel the animation by using the spell and right after dodging, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, so I prefer to save it for only wars or PvE expeditions. And then lastly we have the F ability called the Fireball, which is very powerful damage spell, and as it is an AoE, you don't have to hit directly an enemy, you can just aim it at the ground where the target is standing on and it will damage him as well. So now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet. And your Q spell is called the Ice Storm, which all enemies standing in it will get damaged and slowed. And the more enemies you hit, the higher damage you will get. Then your R ability is called the Ice Shower, which when using will create an ice wall. And if mobs or players go through it, it will stun them. And lastly, the last third ability is basically like an ice block, which by using you put yourself in a block where players cannot damage you. And of course you can go off that ice block by pressing the same F key, or instead press the left mouse button and make it explode and do even more damage to the enemies. So as far as your ability combinations go for the Ice Gauntlet when farming mobs or even players, the best spell combination to do is place the Ice Storm aka the Q ability on the ground and then go Ice Block by pressing the same F key, and players or mobs standing in the storm will be taking a lot of damage every second and you will be fully protected in the Ice Block. Then of course place the Ice Shower aka the R ability whenever you want to stun an enemy or run away from him, and this will create a wall which the enemy cannot go through. And then as far as your Fire Staff abilities go, use the Fireball and Pillar of Fire on grouped up enemies, or to run away from someone or even do more AoE damage, use the Burnout ability and dash through them. And just a simple reminder, I would definitely recommend to only use light attacks and don't bother with doing heavy attacks. I've tested using light attacks versus heavy, and to be honest, there isn't much of a difference, besides the one perk that gives you 10% cooldown reduction, but especially in 1v1s and 50v50 wars, using light attacks is so much easier. You can just basically spam them 24/7 and you don't have to spend that extra 1 second while you're holding the mouse button, so the attack would go from light to heavy. And of course, this is your own personal preference, but if you want to get 2 to 3% even more damage per second, then I believe that using light attacks is the way to go. And with all this said, now let's go over my final conclusions for this build. The Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet weapon combination right now is by far the best DPS/highest damage build that you could have in your world, and you can use it for PvP and PvE as well. And this next step I only use for 50v50 wars or very hard expeditions, as it requires to spend your gold, but if you really want to max out your damage, then for food use the +40 intelligence food. But if you can't afford it, then buy +30 or +20 intelligence food. And then as well, don't forget to use honing stones. I personally prefer to use the tier 4 honing stones, as in my server they are at a decent price. And when activating them, you have to have one of your weapons in your hand and not on your back, or it will not work. And then you use it as any other consumable, and this will give you for 15 to 20 minutes 5 to 7% more damage, depending on which tier you bought. And then on top of all this, to go from 98% possibility to even 100 or even more, on your Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet you want to have one or two of these perks, which is called the Keen and it gives 10% crit chance. Then the second perk is called Enchanted and it gives 9% damage to your light or heavy attacks. And lastly, we have the third perk called the Vicious, and it increases 10% critical damage. So if your weapon has one of these perks or even two, then you significantly increase your DPS. And then lastly, on your gear you want to have Refreshing Pillar of Fire, which reduces its ability cooldown by 12% per enemy hit. And then the second ability called the Empowering Fireball, which makes your fireball ability deal 28% more damage. As a new player, I would recommend to only copy this build's weapon masteries and the equipment, and when you get to level 60 and you really want to max out your damage, then start buying your equipment with these perks. Start using honing stones and everything else I have said in this video. And then of course, last but not the least, for the Ice Gauntlet you want to use the Emerald Gem. Then for your Fire Staff, get the Diamond Gem. And then for your gear, amulets and everything else, use the Enix gems, and that's about it. So if you're looking for the best and highest damage build for mage class, then these are the weapons for you, so have fun. So then moving over to the second build, which is the Great Axe and Warhammer, and these are the attributes you want to have. And just so you would know, this is the best tank/melee DPS build for bruiser players, and it is really good for PvP and PvE as well. So then, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 100 or even 150, and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 249 strength and 150 constitution. And just so you would know, I will explain right away why we chose exactly these numbers. So right now you don't want to go past the 249 strength mark, because the game right now is bugged, and if you have 250 or even more strength, you actually deal less damage than with the 249 strength mark. Of course, when the developers fix this bug, I will make an updated video, but as we have seen, it takes weeks or even months for them to do anything, so for now don't go over the past 249 strength. And then last but not the least, for more damage and to still have a bit more defensives, you want to go with the medium armor, and the best gear setup is to have medium helmet, heavy chest piece, light gloves, heavy pants and light boots, and this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavyweight category. So then for our first weapon we have the Great Axe, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the Reap, and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Charge, and then get these two perks. Then from this point, now let's move over to the other side and unlock all these three perks. Then lastly unlock the last third ability called the Gravity Well, and then get these three perks. And now from this point you're feel free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Warhammer, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the clear out, and then get these 2 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the shockwave, and then get these 2 perks to that as well. And lastly unlock the last third ability called the path of destiny, and then get these 2 perks. And now from this point let's take a closer look at the left side and unlock all these 3 perks, and that's it. Now again from this moment you can spend your points in whatever order you want. So then let's move over to the gameplay where I will show you the best way to play this build and get out of your abilities the best possible results. So first things first, for your Great Axe Q ability we have the gravity well, which you can aim and shoot, and if you hit targets in that electric storm he will take damage and get stunned. Then the second ability is called the Reap, which basically extends your axe for 5 meters, and if enemy is running you can pull him back. And lastly we have the F ability called the Charge, and this is another dash ability which will deal damage and give you more mobility. And now let's go straight into the warhammer, and the first Q spell is called the clear out. It is a wide swing that knocks back all targets in 4 meter range. Then the R ability is called the shockwave, and when using the spell it will give us the ability to slam down the hammer and create a small earthquake, and all players standing in this will get stunned for 2 seconds. And lastly we have the F ability called the path of destiny, which creates a huge electric wave, and all enemies standing in this path will take bunch of damage. So the way you want to attack a player is by using your great axe and then activate the gravity well, and then follow that up with the charge ability. Then when the enemy is out of your all stuns he will probably try to run, so use the Reap ability and pull him back. Then now switch to the warhammer, and either way use your shockwave and path of destiny to stun or deal damage, or just keep it for later and only use auto attacks plus the block system, so you can do 1 to 2 light attacks and then block in between. So like you can see with this build there is no one best way to use your spells. The most important thing to know is that what each ability does, and with time and practice you will know what to do in each fight. Then my first tip for this build is if you're fighting against another melee player, then like I said use 1 or 2 light attacks, and then in between remember to use the blocking system. But if you're fighting against a ranged player then don't forget to use the medium jumps, and to close the distance between a player don't just run into a straight line, but zigzag, and this will make you a lot harder target to hit. Okay, and now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This great axe and warhammer weapon combination right now is super strong, and as you are using a medium armor you can still survive for very long, but at the same time deal bunch of damage. So then like in the first build you want to use honing stones for extra damage, but this time instead of using intelligence food you want to use the plus 40 constitution food. Then the best high tier gear is the void armor with the resilient perk, which gives you 4.8% less crit damage. And for your weapons, in the best case scenario, you again want to have either way more crit chance, crit damage, or extra damage to light or heavy attacks, which we already looked into the previous build. So then last but not the least, for your warhammer and great axe for PvP, use the opal gem, and for PvE use the carnelian gem, and then for all of your gear get the diamond gems. So if you're looking to do massive amounts of damage as a melee player, then this is the build for you, so enjoy! And now moving over to my last and final build, and for the weapons we want to use the greatsword and bow, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0 you want to get your dexterity to 150, and then start building your constitution, and around level 60 you should have 300 dexterity and 150 constitution. And then lastly for your gear you want to go with the light category, which means using 1 medium chest piece and then the rest light equipment. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the greatsword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock both these 2 abilities called the crosscut and relentless rush, and then get these 4 perks. Then now let's move over to the other side and unlock the last third ability called the calamity counter, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can unlock all the other perks in whatever order you like. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the bow, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to unlock the first ability called the evade shot, and then get these 3 perks. Then now let's go over to the other side and unlock the last 2 abilities called the penetrating shot and explosive arrow, and then lastly get these 4 perks, and that's it. Now again from this point and onwards, you can spend your points in whatever way you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the greatsword, and your first Q ability is called the crosscut. which will perform 3 quick slash attacks, that with each attack will do more damage. Then the second skill is called the relentless rush, which will dash through your enemies while spinning and applying a 20% slow for the next 4 seconds. And then lastly we have the calamity counter, which will give you a block for 2 seconds, and depending on how many times the enemy continues to attack you, the more counter damage you will be able to do after the 2-second block expires. And then for the second weapon we have the bow, and your first Q spell is called the penetrating shot, which will shoot an arrow that can go through multiple enemies, dealing very high damage. Then the second skill is called the explosive shot, which will fire an arrow that will deal normal damage, but then on the enemy impact, the arrow will explode, dealing plus 130% more additional explosive damage to all targets in 2.5 meter range. And then lastly we have the evade shot, which after using will make our character leap back while using one last arrow, and this is great for dodging enemy attack while doing high damage. Okay, so then let's move over to the rotation. And first of all, you want to keep your distance between you and the enemy as much as possible, and from the range keep on using the normal bow light attacks. Then when the enemy gets closer and you know that you can land a decent shot, then now use the explosive arrow, then one light attack, and then right after use the penetrating shot. Then now switch to the greatsword and use the crosscut and relentless rush, depending on how close or how many enemies you are fighting. Then from this point the enemy will do damage to you, so now we want to counter him with the calamity counter, and then lastly we switch back to the bow and use the evade shot to leap back, and then we finish off the enemy from distance, and that's it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This greatsword and bow weapon combination is the current highest damage PvP build in New World, and this build will not only give you very high damage, but as well you will be able to fight in melee to long range, and your speed is insane, so you can kite your enemies in PvP or to run around the monsters in PvE. And then last but not the least, for the greatsword and bow, you want to use the opal gem, and then for all of your gear use the diamond gems. And then lastly on your character you want to equip the heart rune of detonate. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build. You can find the link in this video description or just scroll through my channel, and in that guide I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your specific gear and weapons and much more. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for the most fun and one of the best DPS PvP builds, then this is the one for you, so enjoy! And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good New World builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.